It's Louis Theroux's documentary Inside the Manosphere, where Louis follows some of the internet's biggest grifters and victims of capitalism who just so happen to be massively fucking red pill. In the documentary, Louis follows the likes of Harrison Sullivan, I think, HS TikToky, Fresh and Fit's Myron Gains. If you don't know him, count your blessings. Sneeko, whose actual name is Nicholas Ken De Balanthazi. I hope I'm not butchering it. Let's dive into some of these men, though, shall we? Let's look at Myron Gains in action. I want you to look at how Theroux calmly dismantles his views on monogamy.
Myron's been quite open about the fact that he expects to be in a relationship in which there's one-way monogamy, as he calls it. He's allowed to basically pursue other relationships, but you're not.
The women that he's with, he's just gonna be with them for like a night or so, whatever. But I don't think he sees me that way, because there is a reason why I've stayed so long with him.
I don't want to mix things up between you, right? But yeah. But we were talking about in the future that maybe there's a world where you would have more than one wife, right?
She understands that. She knows that could potentially come down in the future.
What do you say about that?
I don't know. I mean, he has said that in the past. I think I'll see when it happens. Like, I don't know how that will work. The thing is that I think...
But right now, it's not going to be anytime soon, because I'm just so focused on working.
But it could happen, right?
It could, of course.
You can kick it down the road only for so long. You know, she's put 2 years into a relationship. If that's your long-term plan, at some point, those two realities will collide.
You know, that's a bridge we'll cross when we get there. Like right now...
What does that mean? That's so avoidant.
It's something, you never know, man. You can always change your mind down the road. Who knows? Maybe I'll say, I only just want to be with one girl, because the two would be too tough, you know?
You've backtracked on that already? Some people in this part of the culture, right, who are advocates for the idea of like the 1% male, that ultimate masculine, that he's...
Frank, go her, sorry. Also, I need, if you could clean up the room too. I need some help, with that.
Was that okay? By the way, I always feel weird, like...
No, it's cool.
It's awkward, though.
No.
How did you feel? Felt a little awkward?
No, not at all. No, okay. Angie, like, she's with me on the street.
She's as on board as you are.
On board with what, specifically?
You know what? Like, just the idea of other ladies.
No, we've had these discussions.
I saw a little bit of pain in her. No, definitely.
No.
Yes.
No.
Definitely.
No.
Yeah, you don't think fine. If I said to her, like, you would have Myron all to yourself, would you rather have that? You don't think she would say, yeah, 100%, of course.
She would say whatever makes him happy. That's what she would say. You know, the time I do have, I spend with her if I'm with any woman.
It's just like really awkward watching that happen. I felt like I was witnessing this man grapple for some power back, telling his girlfriend to go clean the room and then completely backtracking on monogamy when he got pressed by Louis, and then spoke over her when she was asked a question. It's awful. He's reacted to this documentary badly, by the way. He said, Louis fell right into my trap. I knew he would cut hours of footage to remove context and construct a false narrative. Good thing I have it. Time to expose him. And then he linked his stream when exposing Louis, which was well over an hour. He then goes on to make this rather weird threat to Theroux.
You ever listen to K. Billy's Super Sounds of the 70s? It's my personal favorite.
Joe Egan and Jerry Rafferty were a duo known as Dealer's Wheel when they recorded this Dylan-esque pop bubblegum favorite from April of 1974.
I don't know. This is really uncomfortable. Louis Theroux has you raging so hard you're making these elaborate claims of exposing him and that you were expecting this, but also the insane threats of violence because the documentary exposed how fucking dumb you look. Embarrassing. The same Myron Gains, by the way, who has a book titled Women Who Deserve Less, and who also is a massive conspiracist, essentially alluding to the conspiracy that Jewish people run America. Yes, by the way, it is anti-Semitic to claim that Jewish people run America, by the way. I don't think that needs any explanation. And also his response to a video where a man said he essentially doesn't like the hair black women have because it's not long enough, Gaines said in response, "This is why no one wants to date black women." It's just awful. I mean, I don't want to go into these men particularly because if I did, I'd be here all day. And I used to do this all the time on TikTok and I just don't have it in me anymore. I've grown out of it. I just want to show you snippets of all of them from the documentary. So let's look at Harrison Sullivan, aka HS Tiki Toki.
500,000 people on your Telegram, right?
Yeah.
And you're advertising OnlyFans girls on there.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a contradiction there?
No, because I openly say I don't give a fuck and I'm doing it for money. I don't care about
the morality of it.
I know it's not good. I say to people, don't watch porn. It's sad. It's loser shit.
You can't say I promote it, but I discourage people from doing it.
But you can. My kids are going to be very, very happy, very fulfilled. They can do what they want.
You sound a bit like Bonnie Blue.
In what way?
You're saying it doesn't really matter what choices I make because I'm making money and my kids will enjoy a high standard of living. So
Not
my
at all.
choices are irrelevant.
What, me posting a picture with a few girls is the same as getting shagged by 1,000 guys.
It's rationalising.
Don't compare me to Bonnie.
It's rationalising. Are you getting triggered?
It's Louis' chuckle at the end that really kills me. He didn't like that one, did he? This is how he responded.
The Louis Theroux thing was worth it, I think, just for the clout, like just for the visibility. Like people that would never normally see me now know. London, there was like grannies, like literally like pensioners were coming up like, hello Harrison, I just saw you on the Theroux documentary. I was like, what?
What did you say? Is that the girl?
Yeah, I was like, you're right, darling, you fucking little tart. Did you enjoy it?
Ew. If that doesn't prove their grift, by the way, I mean, the way that you spoke about the woman just then, but like, if that doesn't prove their grift, I don't know what does. Lou's been in the game longer than you, darling, so keep up. Let's just do one more clip, then I promise no more. But this moment perfectly captures the intellectual shallowness of the manosphere when Louis Theroux speaks to the influencer Justin Waller. At one point, Waller gestures toward the buildings around them and confidently declares that men built and engineered every single one of them. Louis calmly asks whether we actually know that to be true, and Waller doubles down. According to him, it is simply a fact.
You know, men invent, build, and maintain society. That's a fact.
Don't women do that too?
Look around. Can you name anything that a woman has invented and built in our plain sight?
Around here?
Nothing. Men built all these buildings. They engineered them. They designed them.
Do we definitely know that?
It is a fact.
There are many...
And there's nothing wrong with that, though. That's the other point. People think that we don't like women. I love women.
You're okay with girls, women wanting to be architects, astronauts,
absolutely,
entrepreneurs?
Hell yeah, if that's what they want.
But you think they don't really want that?
I think some of them do. But I think by and largely, these women are looking for husbands and want to have families.
Why do people think that by ending things with fact that it automatically makes it true? It doesn't. But this is a good example of how manosphere arguments often work. They rely on sweeping claims delivered with enormous confidence whilst quietly ignoring the actual evidence. Because if you look at the professions involved in designing and constructing buildings today, by the way, the reality is far more complicated than Waller suggests. In the US, because we're going to use that example, we've got a figure that shows that women are slowly getting into that field. More than a quarter of US architects are women, and that has been rising steadily over the past few decades as women have entered fields that were historically closed off to them. Now, of course, it is true that construction and engineering have historically been male-dominated professions, but the reason for that has very little to do with some innate hierarchy of capability and far more to do with the social and institutional barriers that existed for generations. But blah, 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 blah. I don't want to debunk any of these claims because it's not worth my energy or time. I want to unpack other things. This whole thing, every single minute of it, that the likes of HS Tiki-Toki, look at that name, so wild, and Myron Gains had was a mere performance, a performance of what they believe masculinity to be. Louisa Munch posted a really great video on this on TikTok, and she said something that was so perceptive of this. She said that it isn't about a crisis of masculinity, but a crisis of capitalism. And it's so fucking true, because if you go back a few generations, the model of masculinity that existed in much of the industrialized world was built around a particular economic structure. Working class men in particular, I'm going to say white working class men in particular, were socialized into a system where identity, dignity, and masculinity were closely tied to labor. You got a job, you earned a wage, you supported a household, and through that process, you kind of secured a sense of social status and recognition. was not a perfect system by any means whatsoever, but it did provide a relatively clear pathway through which many men understood their place in the world. And then you fast forward a few decades, and that economic structure has radically transformed. Industrial employment has declined, wages have stagnated, housing, like we spoke about earlier, has become dramatically more expensive and impossible to gain, and secure long term work has been replaced by very, very precarious labor markets. The social role that many men historically relied upon as a source of identity has been destabilized. And that transformation didn't happen accidentally, it's happened alongside the rise of neoliberalism. In a neoliberal economy, the individual is no longer primarily understood as a worker embedded in a community. The individual becomes an entrepreneur of the self, this idea of self determination. You've got these structural problems, stagnant wages, housing crisis, declining social mobility, that are all beginning to be reframed as personal failures to compete effectively within the market. And then the other things like going to the gym and personal discipline and personal branding and all this hustle culture is deemed a success. And that is precisely the worldview you see reproduced inside the manosphere. It's fucking scary. Masculinity is no longer tied to the collective roles like work or community. It becomes a competitive marketplace identity. But I could speak about this so much. I want to hear Vanseca's take. Vanseca, what's your take on this? What are your reactions?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said there about the sort of changing role and how identity is kind of seeps into this kind of entrepreneurial figure or slant as well. I thought that was really perceptive. I guess I'll start off with the silly thing, which is that if these men don't want to date black women, I'm absolutely fine with that. As a black woman, I'm okay with that. I'm all right with that. Yeah, I agree. We can agree on that. That's cool. I think that the documentary was quite good. It was better than I was expecting. I think one of the things that the documentary did that was a bit better than maybe some of the other ones that we've seen, like there was a Channel 4 one about Bonnie Blue. I don't know if people saw that one like last year, which I thought was not great. I think this one was a lot better. You've explained very clearly, so I won't go over it again, the monetization that kind of sits at the heart of the manosphere and the whole point of it, which I think was really, that was laid out really clearly in a sort of almost pyramid-like sort of scheme where you had these like top influencers who were like multimillionaires. You had, these sort of maybe middle income influencers, podcaster types like Fresh Fit who, probably aren't making multi-millions, but they're probably making a lot more than if they were just in like a regular job. And then Louis Theroux also showed those sort of entry-level influencers as well, which I thought was really interesting. I wanted to see more of them, actually, to be honest with you. There was one thing that was missing, which I talked about on Naked Politics quite a bit actually as well, was I think we're missing more conversation. It was completely absent from the documentary, is the people at the very top of that pyramid. And for me personally, the people at the very top of that pyramid are platform capitalists. They're owners, the people who own these platforms. That wasn't really mentioned at any point, to be honest with you. And it feels like a bit of an omission. I'm not sure why. Maybe they genuinely weren't interested. Maybe it got scrapped in the edit or whatnot. I don't know. I get that documentaries are made by lots of different people at once and not just one person. But it did feel like a bit of a kind of glaring omission because the people who own these platforms, in my opinion, are the people who gain the most and are the people who are doing the least in terms of labour, if we want to put our kind of Marxist hat on, right, and think about these things economically. They have, I guess, what Yanis Varoufakis would call a sort of digital fiefdom. Like they have these digital platforms that they own, and other people do the work and the labour on them, like a feudal kind of system, right? Where we're all labouring on these platforms because all of the data that is generated from our outrage, our reactions, our likes, shares, and comments accrues useful data that is then monetized. And then, of course, the influencers, these manosphere guys who are creating content to go on there are laboring to create that. And that came across very clearly in the documentary. That HS Tiki guy, he was literally at any opportunity looking for moments to be able to create content. It looked fucking exhausting. Every single second you're trying to mine your life or your experiences or what's going on around you to create this kind of ever more extreme content, right? And the people who make the most out of that are the people who are owning those platforms who do fucking nothing. They don't do anything to actually create and generate the content there. So I think there was a bit of a glaring omission in the documentary for me about thinking about to what degree, whether we like them or not, and a lot of these influencer guys are fucking risible, horrible people, but to what degree many of these people, particularly those entry-level influencers, are actually being exploited in some ways by the system. And they're being exploited by the very, very wealthy, the top 1%, the guy that owns OnlyFans, the Elon Musks of this world, the people who own these platforms, the guy that owns Telegram or whatever. They're making the most out of this whilst doing absolutely nothing, pretty much, other than just happening to own these digital spaces. It's a kind of sort of techno-feudal system that is really scary, and I wish that had been threaded out and just expanded on a little bit more in the documentary. The main villain was left out of the picture, and I don't really know why.
That's a really great point. I think in that sense, like the Manosphere is not simply a subculture; it's a product of the digital economy that neoliberal capitalism has produced. And you make such a great point. Like, why is it in that documentary that we are not seeing these top dogs that are driving this exploitative economy almost to kind of grift from them? It's kind of frightening. So what is the solution then? Because, like, we've got this space where economic anxiety exists and identity insecurity exists, and all of this algorithmic like attention is kind of just proliferating as much as possible. Like, how do we fix this issue?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't got like the answers up my sleeve, but I'm assuming.
Sounds like give us the solution, please.
I just in 5 seconds. I will say 2 things really quickly. One of them in response to what you just said. But one thing I want to say is that it's really important, because there have been lots of conversations as a result of this documentary about sexism and racism and homophobia and all these disgusting things that get proliferated as a result. I think it's really, really important that we actually manage to link these things that harm marginalized people, harm women, etc., and link it to that economic exploitation. Like, to me, if I'm thinking as a left-wing person, that is the thing that needs to happen for us to understand that there is a significant link between the harms against marginalized people and the exploitation actually of everyday people, of everyday working people in this kind of digital sphere. In terms of solutions, I think it really needs to be for states, governments to get their shit together and to actually be trying to regulate these platforms an awful lot more, to be putting these platforms under the thumb and really not just allowing them to create these kind of expansive digital fiefdoms with no regulation, with no real laws, kind of giving them any real serious remit. Perhaps we need to think about how much one individual or one company can own in terms of these digital spaces, in the same way we might do that with sort of physical things in the market as well. It feels like a very uncompetitive market as well. So I'm sure there'll be other people in the comment section who've got other ideas as well about how we kind of demonetize some of these spaces, or how we can make some of these spaces perhaps more for public good, as opposed to for private individual gain, where we really then see these extreme harms and coming out and seeping into the real world. How do we create a digital space that is for the public good, for the common good, rather than for entrepreneurial kind of ravenous profit?
Yeah, and I think we start venturing into philosophy. It's like, how do we get rid of greed? I start having this existential crisis. I think I've been really going through it the last few weeks, where I'm just kind of like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm kind of just so rattled all the time. And I think, like, they always say, I'm not even trying to joke about this, because genuinely I feel like I'm on the edge of just being like losing my actual mind. There's so much happening at the moment in the world, but yeah, it's I think I've started to look at the Manosphere less like this mysterious cultural rebellion and more like what it actually is. And it's just like pointing to what you said, a marketplace that's built on monetizing and exploiting male frustration in a system that increasingly leaves large numbers of people feeling incredibly insecure economically.